In the previous segment, we explored patterns and how to apply them to Adobe Illustrator objects. No big rocket science going on there for sure. Now, we did use Adobe Illustrator patterns, and Adobe Illustrator does give us hundreds of patterns to work with, but I guarantee you of one thing. There will eventually come a time in your career as an illustrator where you're going to want a pattern that you don't have. So obviously we can make our own patterns. We're going to do two. One's very simple. One is a little bit more complex, but gives you a whole lot more control over the final product. Let's start with creating a simple pattern. Pick up objects that you want to make the pattern out of. Let's start with maybe something as simple as a star. And we'll draw a star right here. And maybe we'll pick up our circle tool, ellipse, and draw some circles around it. This is a real difficult pattern, I want to tell you. And we'll do this. I'm going to select this one, and I'll shift click on this one, and we'll give those a nice color. Maybe give these two colors too. Save some time by selecting multiple objects. I want that as a pattern. Select all the items using your selection tool. Go up to the word Edit on the pull-down menu and go down to Define Pattern. Same way you do it in Photoshop, actually. New pattern will be circles and stars, or circle and star, actually. The reason this stuff is not available is because we have more than one color over here, so it's not giving us the ability to change it. You change that as you're working on it. Click OK. There's our first pattern. We really don't need it anymore. We can get rid of it. Pick up and draw an object on the screen, like maybe a rectangle. So we're going to pick up that tool. Come over here, make sure you got the fill option selected, and click your new button because it's right there. And boom, you've got a colorful, childlike pattern. Interesting though, I guess. That's a predictable pattern. Everything bumps into everything else. It's just like having a brick with that painted on it and repeating it over and over and over again. Let's have a little bit more fun. Let's get rid of that. Now we're going to create one with something called a clip. I want you to draw a rectangle on the screen. Actually, I want you to draw a square. Hold the Shift key down. We don't want anything in it. So let's select our fill button and say none by clicking this button right here. Leave the stroke on for now, but we won't need that later. Now start designing. Actually, let's do this. Let's zoom in on that bad boy because we need precision here. Let's start with, a circle. I'm going to pick the ellipse tool and I'll draw myself a nice circle by holding the Shift key down. And let's go ahead and put that bad boy right on the edge, right there. Now let's give that a color. Make sure you got the fill selected down here and give that a color. I'm going to drag it over here by holding the Alt key down. I'll make a copy. As I'm dragging it, I'm also holding the Shift key so it doesn't wobble up and down, and I'm going to put it right on there again. So I'm cutting it, in a sense, on half on that line. So we're on the fence here and here, exactly 50-50. Let's go ahead and I'll hold the Alt key down, make another one of these. Let's give that a different color. And we'll go ahead and maybe put that one over here, like right about there. And I'm, again, putting it right on that line. I'm going to hold the Alt key this time, and I'm going to drag it down. And I'm going to put another one there. Now to demonstrate this, we need to change some colors. So let's leave this one yellow, but the one down here that kind of complements it on the bottom, let's give it a different color. Same thing over here. Let's make one of those two a different color. Let's do maybe one more circle. So I'll just copy one of these, hold the Alt key down again. And we're going to come over to here this time. So we'll hold the Alt key down, make another copy and put it right on that center line. We're cutting each one of these in half, and we'll change the color of that one to something else. Let's do one more thing in the middle. Let's put a couple of stars in there. Why? Because we can. I'm just clicking and dragging. That's all I'm doing. And we'll leave these all one color. All right, let's get back down to normal size. Pick up your selection tool. I want you to very carefully just select that box that we made that's on the bottom. That's all I got selected. Turn off the fill. So now, in a sense, we have an invisible box. Now, when we started this lesson, in one of the segments, I said you can have an object with a stroke, a fill, or no stroke and no fill. And I said I'd explain why you might want an invisible object. This is one of the times. Seems like an interesting kind of pattern. We're going to select everything, including our box down here. And actually, I'm going to group, you don't have to do this part, but I'm going to group it so we can move it easily, because I want to leave it there because I need to show you the difference of what's happening when we apply it as a pattern. Select it, edit pattern. And we'll call this one clip. Click OK, and there she is. Let's move this out of the way for a second. Get yourself a box or whatever, and draw yourself a box. Make sure you got the fill selected. Come over here and choose that pattern and look at the difference. Look what happened to it. Let me zoom in on this so you can see this. Now I'm going to come back over here. Remember, there's an invisible box right here. Think of that as a fence. Anything outside the fence gets clipped off. The reason this has two colors is because we're losing this part right here. And when this brick is replicated over here, this part of the color comes over here. That's how this works. The clip is an invisible, no stroke, no fill box that must be below everything, and typically you draw it first anyway. But it guarantees that anything outside that invisible box will be clipped off, and all you're left with is this pattern. So if you're very careful about putting, say, a circle on this side and making another one over here on the other side and splitting it exactly down the middle, this part of the circle will replace this part on the other side, as you can see right there, when you actually use it as a pattern. This is where you get good patterns. This is where you get control. This is where you can create stones and patterns on beaches and anything you want, because you're not really repeating the pattern. You're cutting things off and gluing them back in, if you will. It's an amazing little trick. It's been there forever. It's not new, but it gives you the ability to generate these really cool patterns. Remember, a no stroke, no fill box at the bottom of all the objects. That's the trick.